Chapter 1. An Unexpected Fan. Spring had come to Arizona, one of the most colorful states in America, with stunning red peaks, golden hills, gorgeous rivers, epic canyons, and the coexistence of deserts and great forests. Isaac knew well he was much better than his opponent, Andrew, the best player in Arizona Countryside Table Tennis Club. Andrew, nicknamed Arizona the Invincible, also a professor of mechanical engineering, had challenged for a defeat that no local players could achieve in years. The power he generated in a smash rivaled the punch of a heavyweight boxing champion. And speed followed power. Before his opponent could react, the smashed ball would have flown off the table. He faced no challenge in Arizona for years, but his explosive attacks paled in front of Isaac, whose marvelous dexterity absorbed the opponent's force as a tree absorbs rain. The power of Andrew, scary or appealing, disappeared invisibly, like a clay cow entering the sea, dissolved and absorbed. Isaac had been making things more entertaining and dramatic, playing a tight game in the spacious center court, surrounded by a morbid audience, mostly Andrew's fans, some standing, some sitting. Isaac. A young woman with dark brown eyes and an exquisite face with dark skin, chanted and clapped hands with unwanted enthusiasm whenever Isaac won a point. She looked athletic, her hair blonde, thick and short, covering her jaws. She wore a leather jacket, long jeans, heavy boots, and a pair of gloves, all in black. Her jacket was not zippered. Inside the jacket was a silky white shirt and a ribbon sash belt tied across her waist. With heavy makeup, one could not tell her exact age, but she looked resplendent in her dress. She stood in front of the bench, where Isaac put his bag under. She seemed to have a great interest in his game, cheering for him all along. Isaac did not remember seeing her before. He had attracted many fans, who had seen his matches posted on the internet. As it came to the final few points of the match, Isaac prolonged the rally. He concealed his power, chopping the ball, without adding much spin, so that his opponent could loop back more consistently. Each time he seemed to be far out of position, and no one expected a normal player could reach it. He saved it with his superior footwork. The mood of the audience began to change. The crowd went wild, clapping hands almost incessantly. While enjoying the crowd's cheering, Isaac faintly noticed the woman was stooping down slowly. As the rally proceeded, Isaac stole another quick glance at the woman. She had walked around the crowd to reach the door. The slight distraction made him lose some precision, dumping the ball onto the net. The crowd cried with a big sigh. As he picked up the ball, the woman exited the door. When Isaac was about to serve, George, the owner of the club, big and middle-aged, who had invited him to have a friendly match, stepped forward and said, "Isaac, I don't know if she's your friend. The lady took a book from your bag and left." Isaac stared at him, not fully comprehending what had happened. Then he cried as if startled awake from a dream, "Oh, no." He picked up the clipboard, which was clipping a pen and a score sheet, and rushed out. The woman would have got onto her car and would be driving away, he thought. All he could do was to record the license number and the car model. He looked around the vast open space. To his surprise, he did not see any car driving in any direction or leaving the car park of the club. Suddenly, he heard a horse neighing. The woman riding on a horse ran out from the back of the clubhouse and swiftly ran on a trail going east, heading toward a distant mountain. Isaac went back inside and won the last few points quickly. He grabbed a few bottles of water and some snack bars from the club's refrigerator, bade farewell to George and the fans, not losing much time. Immediately, he shouldered his backpack and ran on the trail, chasing in the direction the horse ran. It was late morning, and the temperature had been rising, but the sky was partly cloudy, making running pleasant. The trail was not always clearly visible, and many times it was lost in a bush or a mini willow grove, and he had to find his way to reconnect to a new segment. He had been on the run many times, and once again, he ran on a broken long trail that seemed endless. There was always a purpose in each of his long runs, and it was no exception for this one. While running, he often recalled his childhood, those untroubled days when he ran contentedly amid surroundings enveloped by love and tenderness, and when he was protected and loved dearly by his parents, who died a painful death. Life had become heavy, his mind filled with hatred and anger. The world was bizarre and disturbed. He had to find his own way. The trail led him through a vast plain of lush grass, which looked thriving and fresh, and seemed to welcome him, as his fans welcomed him at the club. Along the way, he saw lovely features and scenes. In one place he saw a meadow with wildflowers blooming, in another a briar bush softly swaying in the wind that once again reminded him of the days he ran and played in harvested farming fields with neighbor kids when he was innocent and naive and did not know hatred and revenge and the dark side of humans. Long before he was an adult, he had mastered two invincible arts, running and thinking. In the zealous years of his childhood, he had picked up the two arts naturally. The world was colorful and mysterious, many things puzzling and confusing. He strived to grasp the meaning of nature and his existence. Every time he ran, he sought answers. Any attained wisdom and answers would trigger a new thirst in him. He felt hearing a voice in his heart. Before you exist, a mission to which you have to accomplish, and through which you find the meaning of your existence. All these, elevated and enigmatic, composed his world. He was full of questions and full of dreams. But fate had played upon him. When he became a teenager, everything was deranged. He retained the first art, which was the foundation of any sport. In the forthcoming years, running had become part of his life. But the second art abandoned him. He tried to resist it, giving it up only to result in suffering and pain. Little by little he learned to align his thoughts with leaders. He had given the art away for the most wretched and ephemeral things, for political correctness and for making his leaders happy, unwillingly. The voice faded in his mind, and he could only sometimes hear faintly its echo deep in his mind. He became numbed and had no more dreams, no more thinking of the meaning of his existence, and no more questioning of justice and injustice. All remained was striving to move on. For some years, he lived in a world torn between his love of the art and the necessity of throwing it away. He lived in rages, turmoil, and tumult in an invincible vortex that was sucking him in. But it seemed God had not forgotten him. He was destined to be a runner and a thinker. Fate led him to a free world, where he no longer had to align his thinking with any leader, and he could express freely, thus think freely. Life changed thoroughly and shockingly, and he regained the second art naturally and swiftly. He was thinking and searching for his existence. His exile, homeless life, and his taking refuge from the real world prepared him for vengeance on people who made him suffer. Strange was that he had to go through so much pain, so many struggles, and so many risks to become a thinker again. Now he examined the madness of those years across the gulf of irrevocability. There might be a purpose of his suffering. He had encountered a variety of people, athletes, artists, janitors, scientists, workers, intellectuals, lovers, and haters. They no longer seemed alien to him as they once had. He might not understand or share their views and thoughts, but he shared with them life's urges, worries, fears, yearnings, and emotions. These billions of thinkers on this planet, communicating and exchanging thoughts, might form a grand consciousness who knows its existence, growing and shrinking as thinkers striving for or ceasing thinking. Might be simply he had become a dreamer. As he ran, he continued his daydreaming. He had renounced the material world, and by doing so, he needed so little to move on. Some clouds formed and the sky became gray. He saw in the distance a tiny figure on the trail, and he knew that it was a girl riding a horse. The distance between them was shortening. Soon he came to the entrance of a forest of a large mountain, and he saw a big sign, "Beware of mountain lions." He stopped, hesitated. Apparently, either the girl didn't see the sign, or she had ignored it. The sky turned dark, and he decided to enter the forest, which was still and quiet. He continued his pursuit, running steadily on the trail. After another hour of chasing, he heard the sound of galloping. The girl looked back and found Isaac was only a dozen horse paces away. She smiled wittily at him. "Faster, Isaac." She slightly bent and slapped the horse neck with both hands once. Then she clapped her hands twice and chanted, "Isaac, go," like the way she cheered him in the club. Slapped, clapped, clapped. "Isaac, go." She repeated the pattern and seemed to have much fun in doing so, as the horse ran significantly faster. Soon the horse and the girl disappeared from his sight, and the mountain fell silent and still. After hours of running, Isaac slackened his speed a little, but he pressed on. He deeply believed he could catch up with the horse, as it had to carry a rider, and it dissipates heat by panting, not by sweating as a human does. One more hour passed, and he caught up with the horse again. The girl heard his footsteps and looked back. It seemed that she was delightful and excited to see Isaac coming near, her face filled with laughter emotion. She smiled sweetly and cried, "Good job." She bent down, raised her legs, and swung inward to lash the horse. The horse darted forward, and Isaac immediately fell behind. Before long the steed and the girl disappeared from his sight again. He was indignant and found repugnant what she did. He pressed forward, running with firm steps. After another hour of running, he arrived at a segment of the trail that the trees were unusually dense, and a stream flowed nearby. Though it was still in the afternoon, the environment was quite dusk in the gloom of the forest. He saw at the far end a mysterious figure under a great tree, not like the shape of any animal he knew of. That aroused his suspicion and made him alert. He did not know exactly what it was yet. As he got closer, his surprise grew and, finally, he realized the shape was formed by the girl standing next to her horse and caressing it. At a closer distance, he noticed the horse was grazing and licking water from a bowl under a great tree. When Isaac got near, the girl calmly picked up the bowl, pouring the remaining water on the head of the horse, and put the bowl back in the saddlebag that was tied to the horse. She waved and smiled at Isaac before riding on the horse. The girl did not slap or lash the horse, allowing it to run at a relaxing speed. Soon Isaac was within a few horse paces from them, and the girl sensed that he was near. She pressed her hands against the saddle, slowly stretched her legs outward, and slowly, as in the circus, raised them above the horseback. She swung her legs in a circle, her hands thrusting the horse back. Her whole body was lifted and rotated 180 degrees. When she fell back on the horse saddle, she was riding the horse backward, and she faced Isaac, who was shocked to see her making such a dexterous swing, seemingly so easy and effortless. Though looked tender and soft with childlike facial expressions, the girl was very strong and might have years of training in Oriental martial arts, he thought. She unzippered her jacket again and grabbed a pen-like object from the inner pocket. She raised it above her head and feigned a solemn expression. "Watch out for my poisonous darts. Get closer and your wife will never see you again." She wobbled her hand as if she was throwing the object. The girl's warning had a prodigious effect on him. He shuddered and instantly slowed down. He was shy of getting too near, and the girl laughed heartily as he fell behind. Isaac had become physically stronger. He feared humans a lot more than wild animals. As he learned more about them, his mind became more suspicious, filled with more hatred and fear. But he was no coward. He pressed forward, mastering his fears as best as he could. He was pondering upon plans how he could subdue the girl. Might be he could tie a stone to a string and slung it to the horse's legs to collapse them, or he could simply sling it at the girl. But hurting anyone would be his last resort. He certainly did not want to initiate an attack on a girl. In an empty mountain, no matter how strong or dangerous the girl he perceived, his consciousness did not allow him to do so. Hatred his heart was filled. He remained a man full of sympathy, and in any way, a kind person. As he was searching for other solutions, a roar came from the forest, and almost instantly the horse reared and neighed sharply. The girl fell onto the ground. Isaac stopped, stiffened, staring out with starting eyes. A shadowy shape treaded down the hill. The horse was frightened and darted forward, vanishing into the next segment of the trail, which curved around the hill. As the shape treaded nearer, Isaac determined that it was a mountain lion, which was still invisible to the girl. The girl did not seem to be injured as she rolled a few rounds when her body hit the ground, but fear fell on her. She bounced up and cast around her a scrutinizing glance, but did not discover anything suspicious. Only when she strained her eyes and stared at the forest, did she see the mountain lion behind trees. She shuddered, screamed, and stood petrified. Then, recovering from the shock, she swiftly ran toward Isaac. The lion immediately chased after her. They ran past him, and he looked over his shoulder to watch the girl. She veered desperately into the forest, hoping the trees could block and slow down the lion's chase. Isaac followed them into the woods. Unfortunately, after passing through a number of rows of trees, she reached a flat grass field, and the distance between her and the lion was shortening rapidly. Isaac watched and heard her screaming. The girl had run too fast on the grassland and tripped. She fell, her hands and face hitting the grass, and her whole body sliding forward. She turned, lying on her back as the lion sprang on top of her. She screamed, "Help!" as she launched a sequence of punches on its head. That was not enough to stop assaults from the lion, which was swinging and rotating its head, trying to bite her arms. She swiftly raised and opened her legs and pounded hard on the lion's body with her heavy boots. The strike certainly caused much pain to the lion as it grunted and stopped biting momentarily. It was a precious moment for the girl, who dropped her feet on the ground and bent her legs, jerking hard against the grassland. The jerk propelled her body to slide away from the lion. However, before she could stand up, the lion recovered and sprang forward, biting onto her left foot. She immediately drew back her right foot and kicked heavily on the lion's ear. It felt the pain, freed her left foot, but bit onto her right foot and dragged her backward. She screamed, "Help!" Isaac was impressed by her tenacity but realized that she could not endure the assault for long and she was in grave danger. He walked away. The girl thought he had forsaken her, crying desperately. Isaac dropped his backpack and seized a long dried birch branch blade in front of him. The branch formed a natural heavy pole that he could wield as a weapon. He turned, raised the pole, and ran a couple of giant steps, leaping high into the air. The pole smote down at the lion's back before he landed. He had not used full force, otherwise, he would break its back and might probably kill it. After months of running and training in the mountains, his power and strength had reached a new level and he could control it at will. He could hang himself on a bar with just one finger, and he had practiced many fighting forms that he could deal with any wild animals. Moreover, a scientist friend had injected poisonous snake liquid into his body, starting with a minute amount and gradually increasing the amount over a period of a year. Now he had antibodies that could resist most poisonous animal bites. He had been transformed and had much confidence in handling any wild animals. Even with a softened hit, the lion was struck wobbling. Isaac pulled the pole back and passed it under its body. He whipped its four legs back and forth swiftly. The lion roared painfully and fell onto the ground. When it struggled to stand up, its tail dropped. It wailed, grunting with low-pitched screams before lurching into the forest with a drooping tail. The girl laid on the ground petrified, panting like a hunted animal. Her cheek was blanched, and her face alternated between red and white, her eyes filled with horror. "Thank you so much for saving me again," she gasped. She was utterly overpowered by terror and fear. Isaac nodded, waiting for her to calm down. He felt strange about hearing the word again. Just when the lion disappeared among the trees, he heard a shuddering roar, a premonition of danger. He turned to stare at the hill. Instantly, a misty form loomed up, like a dark shadow at the hilltop. The shape wheeling swiftly across the trees like a shadow of an untimely night. The girl screamed and trembled. Great fear fell on her again. Isaac was intensely on the alert. He strained his eyebrows and saw another mountain lion, a lot larger, apparently the spouse of the injured one, running and jumping at the high land of the woods. It stopped when it saw Isaac standing straight at a distance. He clenched the pole tightly with both hands at one end, pointing the other end, sharp and solid at the lion which was now treading slowly in his direction. Before long, the lion made another great roar, then ran toward Isaac. When the lion swooped near, venturing into a dangerous distance, Isaac released a long thunderous cry, shaking the forest, and ran uphill charging the lion. He advanced up the gentle slope with full speed. The forest fell silent. When the man and the beast approached each other, the lion began to slow down. It came to a standstill as its scary enemy ran near, only a few paces away. It crouched down and opened its mouth wide, exposing its hideous sharp long teeth with wild roars. Isaac realized that if he pushed the pole into its mouth, the lion would be fatally damaged. He didn't want to kill and was just in time to point the pole downward to pierce the ground to swing his whole body high above the lion. At the crest of the swing, he let go of the pole and pushed it away like a pole vault athlete releasing the pole in a jump. While the lion was confused by the sudden disappearance of its target, Isaac fell upon its back and rode on it. Two quick punches, powerful enough to tame any animal, struck the lion's neck with cracking sounds. The lion momentarily collapsed as Isaac jumped off to the ground. He picked up the pole and stood aside to watch. The lion stood up with gurgling roars, its tail dropped. It was not fighting for honor and it obviously realized who was the master. It shook its head, howled wildly a couple of times, and swerved off to the dense woods. Only when the lion had gone far away did Isaac walk back to the girl, carrying the pole with him. He picked up his backpack along the way. The girl was aghast, looked pale, no longer panting but sat on the grass, her back leaning against a tree. She was taking off her gloves, leather coat, and boots, which were all torn. She rolled up the sleeves of her shirt, exposing her pale skin which contrasted the dark color of her face. Her forearms, hands, and feet were all bleeding but nothing was fatal. Sadly, she examined the cracks the lion had made on her smooth, tender skin. As Isaac came near, she looked at him with a covetous gaze. I was watching. You beat the beast with indomitable courage. It's not courage. It's a skill, Isaac said coldly. The girl was scared of his austere features and fell silent. He retrieved from his bag a small box that contained some wound care products and threw it to her. Thank you so much, Isaac, the girl said, her face less pale now. You are welcome, Isaac said, standing a pace in front of her with the pole. She began to treat her wounds, calming down. I apologize for teasing you on the horse. Apology accepted, Isaac said, and fell silent. He was more reticent than normal. After she had disinfected and wrapped all her wounds, Isaac gazed at her with brooding eyes. Softly and tensely he questioned, You work for them? She understood well what he was asking. She avoided his gaze, stared at her feet, and nodded, putting on her boots and rolling down her sleeves. He spoke curtly, I know your organization well. You better honestly tell me all your intentions. Give all the information in your power. He gently raised the pole with both hands and broke it into two halves by knocking it against his knee. You can take this half to protect yourself from lion attacks. Upon seeing the way he broke the strong pole, the girl trembled, but for some unknown reason, she became less fearful of Isaac. She said calmly, Sir, since your escape in Hong Kong, our whole intelligence department was shocked. No dissident refuge in Hong Kong is able to escape clean after he has been located. But you were an exception, slipping away like a ghost. You escaped the ensnare of two of our most capable agents, not leaving a trace of your ever existing. Not only that we lost you, but we also could not find any mark left by you and obtained zero information about the organization that helped you escape. For a few years, we lost track of you and have put your case aside. We thought we would never find you again. But last year we came across the sports videos you put on the internet and we began to activate your case again. As you have become a sports star, it is not difficult to trace you. Isaac chuckled. Don't exaggerate. I am never any sports star. You didn't give me much new information. Your unit sent you to abduct me? The girl smiled faintly. You know this won't happen. Now you are in America, the only safe place that our dissidents could reside on this planet. We dare not and will not harm you, let alone kidnap you. We just want to understand your activities here. His eyes narrowed. He knew that she lied but ignored what she said. Where's the manual? He asked. The girl looked up and stared at him with a pitiful expression. Inside the saddlebag, tied on the horse, she said, her voice slightly tremulous, a great contrast to her proud and radiant face when she was riding on the horse a while ago. He peeked through the trees to look at the trail, which was empty and quiet. The horse had long gone and never came back. She continued to say, I am sorry. It was my mission. I just wanted to get your manual to understand more of your games. I heard stories about your adventures, from your escape in Hong Kong to your resurface in America. You have become a legend in our unit, and I have longed to see you. She softened her tone and spoke in a lower voice with a faint smile. Actually, I am your sports fan. I am delighted to see any of your games and have watched many of your videos. I never have any intention to harm you. You are adorable. She began to talk about his game and how much she loved watching it. She obviously had mastered the art of talking and had received much training in conversations under threat. Her speech was insinuating, her voice sweet. She praised him and her subtle compliments made him feel charming and attractive. Isaac felt that he was a hero who could arouse fascinations in many girls. It was pleasant and enjoyable to listen to the incessant compliment from a girl whose speech sounded so naive and innocent as well as natural and simple, but Isaac's thought began to drift. His look so resolute and wandering as if she was lured by different forces. Her eloquent speech, childlike expressions, and tender solid body could easily make a naive young man die for her. But Isaac was no naive man. Time and sorrow made him cast doubt on anything that appeared surreal. He resented what she insinuated. Though he could never tell when they were speaking the truth or lies, and he would not harm the girl, every moment he was cautious, defending himself from any of her ill intentions. The situation was clear. She realized that if necessary, Isaac could easily kill her and her flesh would be devoured by wild animals, erasing her existence. Isaac's mind flashed a horrible memory of the brutal behavior of a mainline policeman he watched in a video in which the man dressed as a Hong Kong policeman to disguise the public. He brutally beat a protester, stepping on his broken head which was flooding the ground with blood, and the policeman continued to hit him mercilessly with a cuff. A true Hong Kong policeman would never beat an injured person in such a brutal way. The brutal policeman was protected by mainland policy, and no one could send him to court regardless of demands from huge protests. She was raised in such an environment, taught to treat any enemy mercilessly. She would imagine the world was full of hostile forces, which always tried to annihilate her homeland, and she would be treated in the same way if she fell to her enemies. She had been living in a cold world filled with lies and tended to believe their lies and ignored reality. She did not have any religious belief. When facing death, she would play any tricks to save her life. What she did not realize was that he would never harm someone, not even an animal, in such a situation. Isaac believed there is always some virtue deep inside one's mind, and there's an inner voice that she could hear when she faced death. He sighed. He stared at her with doubtful eyes. How could I trust one who wanted to throw poisonous darts at me? I want the manual back, he said. His voice sounded slightly mocking. She pursed her lips. It was just a pen, not a dart. I just wanted to stop you from chasing me. She suddenly stood up, pulled down the sash belt, stretching out her arm sideways with one hand holding the belt, and gave a whimsical smile. If you don't believe me, feel free to search. Isaac stared at her, tender and firm, wearing a tight shirt and jeans. Slender as a fashion model standing on her long legs. Obviously, no book could be hidden under her clothes. He smiled mischievously. You have to do more to prove you are not hiding anything, not just stretching out your arms. She dropped her arms, smiling, somewhat abashed. I have done my part. You have to do yours. Isaac ran out of words and regretted what he just said. He stepped forward, smiled, folded hands, and bowed to her like one worshipping Buddha. Amitabha. He then squatted down, put on a pair of gloves, and searched her torn leather jacket lying on the grass. Nothing except 3 pens were found. He was suspicious about the real usage of these pens. So, he grabbed one. He suddenly feigned a dart-throwing movement. Watch out. The girl screamed and ducked. He shook his head. This is indeed a fatal weapon. There is in every person both good and evil. Some chose evil and nourish evil. They worship devils and lost the sense of righteousness and justice. The girl cowered on the ground. Isaac, she said coaxingly. I am sorry. Isaac looked into her eyes and realized she still bore much fear. The lion's attack was too horrible, and she barely traveled past the entrance to hell. She escaped only because of luck. I hope you will be on the right path. She asked anxiously, Isaac, could you escort me down the hill? Isaac shook his head and said firmly, no, sorry. The chance that you will meet another mountain lion is extremely small. The girl asked timidly, why are you so sure? Her tremulous voice along with her pitiful expression made Isaac's heart melt again. He said friendly, I am familiar with this area. I have lived in Arizona for some time. East of here, there is a cliff dropping 4,000 feet that I am fond of climbing. At the top, there are various kinds of animals, and I learned of their behaviors. They are often afraid of humans. Even if you meet a lion, you will be safe. Take this half of the pole. You have great training in martial arts, except that you have not been trained to fight wild animals. If you see a mountain lion, never run away. Fight it with this pole, and you will beat it. After you have got down the hill, you can get help from a mini-mart. The girl begged, you still don't trust me. I vow that I will not harm you. I am your fan. Isaac shook his head again. It's not because I don't trust you. It's because I must run after the horse to get my manual back. She was shocked, her eyes dilated and her mouth half open, mulling over what she just heard. You are kidding me. Without carrying the weight of a rider, the horse runs like a rocket. There's no way you can catch it. I'll find out. He threw the pole and a bottle of water to her and handed her some dollar bills. The girl looked disappointed. May I thank you again and wish you the best? She stretched out her arms as she spoke. Isaac stepped forward and she threw herself into his arms. They hugged each other with genuine feelings. He was invigorated by her gentle touch, feeling the warmth and smelling the scent of her body. He laid his hands on her back and patted her as a show of sympathy and consolation. He absorbed her sorrow and fear amid sentiment and tenderness. The girl sobbed as her affections were rekindled by her contact with one so warm and ardent. It was a fabulous feeling that he could protect a girl and comfort her, making her feel safe and warm. Before long, she stopped sobbing, slightly bent, and buried her head in his bosom. He caressed her head with one hand and felt blissful when he sensed her rapid breaths that smelled fragrant. For a short moment, he forgot and lost himself, embracing the girl with a convulsive pressure. A chill wind blew, and he came back. He let go of her reluctantly. The girl wept, but he must continue his journey. He turned around and ran on the trail, chasing the horse which had long gone.